Don Johnson turned down the iconic 80s movie that made Kevin Costner a superstar in 1986. Miami Vice star Don Johnson made one of the more baffling choices in movie history, turning down the lead in Brian De Palma's The Untouchables. An easy paycheck in a now-classic gangster classic? What's to mull over? Johnson didn't see it that way. Already tied to cops and robbers plots and glitzy high-budget productions on one of the most expensive shows of the time, the last thing he desired was to repeat himself and acquire a reputation as a one-trick pony. Quickly building a fanbase, Miami Vice established Johnson as one of the most coveted names in show business during the show's stint on air, running from fall 1984 to spring 1989 on NBC. Exhausted of being associated with a cop shtick, Johnson happily passed on his chance to match wits against Al Capone. In a recent interview, he explained exactly why he turned down the gig that made Kevin Costner a superstar. The Untouchables paved the way for Costner to launch his own movie career, which would eventually blossom into directing, producing, and writing. As the idiom goes, the clothes make the man. The transformation from struggling actor to overnight sensation Don Johnson suddenly rose to fame out of nowhere in 1984. The unknown indie actor, whose most prominent performance was in a low-budget sci-fi flick in 1975, A Boy and His Dog, blew up in a matter of weeks upon the release of the MTV-influenced hit drama. Johnson's celebrity status reached critical mass, the actor now inseparable from his on-screen persona as Vice Detective Sonny Crockett, an undercover cop driving sports cars and decked out in the latest Italian styles before anyone cared about Italian designers. However, as he told Graham Norton, his decade-defining apparel on Miami Vice was a fluke. Desperately attempting to stave off heatstroke, filming on location in the tropical humidity of southern Florida, he threw away his socks and ties. His style was emulated by men, while female admirers viewed him as a sex symbol, and Italian pop stars composed love ballads in his honor. Oddly, it didn't go to his head. The adulation greatly irritated him, style pioneer or fashion victim. Fearing success swelling his ego and the lifestyle eroding his work ethic, by 1986, he had come to the conclusion that he could no longer be identified solely as the cop in fancy suits shooting smugglers. In practical terms, that meant his days as a gruff cop cruising in a sports car were over. When director Brian De Palma came calling, offering him the lead role in the upcoming Untouchables adaptation, based on a long-forgotten TV series from the 50s, Johnson didn't give it much thought. He felt the Elliot Ness character would be boring and not allow him to grow as an actor, loathing playing another pretty boy police officer, unimpressed with the bombastic script. He explored his thought process on Marc Maron's WTF podcast in March 2025. The thing I realized early on was that, okay, I gotta separate myself from this character. I gotta separate Don Johnson from Sonny Crockett, ASA. It was really sort of about picking projects that were diametrically opposed to what I had just done so that I didn't get typecast in just this one thing. The working script De Palma delivered seemed flat, posing no challenge. The concept at first glance, just more dress up. He didn't know that Robert De Niro was going to be in The Untouchables, or he would have jumped aboard happily what became one of the most compelling crime films of the decade. Costner, then a journeyman actor with limited credits on his CV, what would have been his breakout role in The Big Chill axed in the editing stage in its entirety, got a call. We should note, the film was marketed on the name power of the supporting actors, Sean Connery and Robert De Niro. Johnson isn't as crazy as he sounds. The early script allegedly passed around to Michael Douglas, Gene Hackman, Harrison Ford, and Mickey Rourke, with no takers. Costner got phenomenally lucky. As we now know, he astutely picked up the gig no one wanted, kicking off a professional hot streak. There is life after Vice after passing. The TV star made a small, admittedly forgettable romantic comedy about a suburbanite having a midlife crisis instead, to make a statement. It flopped, the heartthrob losing out on his chance to be a blockbuster leading man to star in Sweetheart's Dance in 1988, co-starring Jeff Daniels and Susan Sarandon. Subsequent films were typically goofball comedies, including one with Costner called Tin Cup. Ironically, looking to avoid typecasting, Johnson would return to patrolling the streets in a sports car in 1996. He once again took residence in the Friday night time slot as Inspector Nash Bridges in the show of the same name. Later, he landed roles in Django Unchained and Knives Out, carving out a career as a character actor on TV and on the big screen. Did he regret the career-altering decision? Based on his interviews, not one bit. He was too busy at the time, branching out into a music career, powerboat racing, and weekend target practice with Hunter Thompson. Currently, he co-stars in ABC's Dr. Odyssey, streaming on Hulu.